Hello everybody, it's lovely to be able to speak with you again. In this video I'd like to address two topics briefly, just to give you an update of a couple of things that are quite important for us as Tyndale Christian School. The first is that, as you will be aware, on the 23rd of November major restrictions regarding COVID are going to be relaxed and borders are going to be opened up, and we understand that this may well have an impact on our state moving forward. We are not yet certain of what this is going to mean for schools, should there be COVID cases, should there be outbreaks, and so we are continuing to work with authorities to try and get some more certainty around that, and as soon as we know anything we will pass that on to you. I just want to encourage you, to reassure you that we are working in this space to ensure that we have certainty about schooling and that we can keep everybody here as safe as possible. So please wait for an update on that. Secondly though, I want to address the fact that on Sunday there was a major article in the Sunday Mail about funding of schools, both government and non-government schools. And unfortunately, the writer included our school here at Salisbury East in regarding to its funding and comparing it to the government sector. We were pretty disappointed that we weren't contacted and advised that our school was going to be named. And we were also very disappointed with the tenor of the letter and what it was trying to achieve. From our perspective, Tyndale Christian School was used to demonstrate that non-government schools get a better deal when it comes to funding than public schools from government schools. And our view is that the way in which it was done in the article lacked credibility, but also it creates an unnecessary wedge between government and non-government schools, which I believe is unhelpful and unsubstantiated. Specifically, they said they compared us at Tyndale Christian School Salisbury East with Glenunga International High School in the eastern suburbs. The model of funding that we have here in Australia is based on need of the students and also the parental capacity to pay. And so therefore, any funding that a school receives must be viewed in that context. You can't just take that school gets that much money, that school gets that much money, it's unfair, or they get more, they get less, there's something wrong. No, each school must be looked at individually based on the needs of that school community and the parental capacity to be able to pay for the education that their children are receiving. Secondly, it's our view that if you are going to compare what schools are getting, whether they be government or non-government schools, then surely you should be comparing them against schools in the same area, where we come from the same socio-economic demographic, where we're looking at families who have similar backgrounds, where you have the same level of clientele in your schools. To compare Tyndale Christian School with a school in the eastern suburbs, therefore, we think is artificial and very unhelpful. It would have been much better if they were going to compare us to other schools, for them to compare us with Salisbury East High School, our next door neighbour, or with Salisbury High School, and then be able to demonstrate what the funding has looked like. Now, I think one of the reasons they didn't do that is because they knew perfectly well that the funding that Salisbury East High School gets and the funding that Salisbury High School gets is actually more than Tyndale, and that may not have suited the purpose of the article. It's really important to know that when they're looking at this parental capacity and needs of the children, some of the things that they take into account are size of the school, remoteness of the school, the Indigenous percentage within the school, the number of families from a non-English speaking background, the number of students with diagnosed disabilities and learning needs. All of these factors are built into the model. And so therefore it's clear that some schools that are living in a large metropolitan high school in South Australia, in a part of the community where the socioeconomic status is very high, is clearly going to get less funding than a small Indigenous school in the APY lands. And nobody would see that that would be a problem because it's based on need. And so our view is that to just pick a number from one school and pick a number from another school and say, oh, look at this comparison, is a non-credible way of going about trying to present an argument. Finally, we were very disappointed by some of the comments that were made in the article about the model and therefore inferring that somehow the funding that Tyndale got reinforced those statements. Those statements, we believe, were incredibly unhelpful and actually drive a wedge between government schools and non-government schools, which just isn't there. The reality is that the funding model, while not perfect, addresses funding on the basis of need. And therefore, irrespective of what school you go to, families should be confident that they're getting the funding based on the need of that school. That is certainly how we feel about Tyndale. We are not at all worried about the fact that Salisbury High School and Salisbury East High School get a little bit more funding than we do per student. It's based on need. And so therefore we celebrate the fact that they're getting the funding that they need to be able to look after their community, just as they should be celebrating the funding that we get to look after our community. And so we believe that rather than trying to drive wedges between government schools and non-government schools, that those who are in authority, those who commentate on funding, should actually be trying to celebrate the great things that all schools are doing. You will never hear me bag government schools. You'll never hear me bag other non-government schools. You'll never hear me trying to compare ourselves in terms of the funding we get compared to them. It is an unrealistic, unhelpful, and it's just something that I won't do. I want to encourage you if you have read the article, to see it for what it is, and to understand that our funding is fantastic, and we don't need to be either ashamed or gloat over what we get. We just need to use what we get wisely, along with the wonderful fees that you provide us with, and make sure that our school functions effectively. That's it from me. I hope that makes sense. There is a letter coming out, which is a copy of the letter that I've sent to the Sunday Mail, expressing our disappointment with it, and I hope this will make sense to you. If you've got any questions about it, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'd love to chat with you. God bless. Bye-bye.